Welcome back. Today I'll talk about a well known struggle in history. The Six Day War was a brief but bloody conflict fought in June 1967 between Israel and the Arab states of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. The Six Day War came on the heels of several decades of political tension and military conflict between Israel and the Arab states. In 1948, following disputes surrounding the founding of Israel, a coalition of Arab nations launched a failed invasion of the nascent Jewish state as part of the First Arab Israeli War. A second major conflict, known as the Suez Crisis, erupted in 1936 when Israel, the United Kingdom, and France staged a controversial attack on Egypt in response to Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser's nationalization of the Suez Canal. An era of relatively calm prevailed in the Middle East during the late 1950s and early 1960s, but the political situation continued to rest on a knife's edge. Arab leaders were aggrieved by their military losses and the hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees created by Israel's victory in the 1948 war. Many Israelis, meanwhile, continued to believe they faced an existential threat from Egypt and other Arab nations. A series of border disputes were the major sparks for the Six Day War. By the mid 1960s, Syrian backed Palestinian guerrillas had begun staging attacks across the Israeli border, provoking reprisal raids from the Israeli Defense Forces. In April 1967, the skirmishes worsened after Israel and Syria fought a ferocious air and artillery engagement in which 6 Syrian fighter jets were destroyed. In the wake of the April air battle, the Soviet Union provided Egypt with intelligence that Israel was moving troops to its northern border with Syria in preparation for a full-scale invasion. The information was inaccurate, but nevertheless stirred Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser to action. In a show of support for his Syrian allies, he ordered Egyptian forces to advance into the Sinai Peninsula, where they expelled a United Nations peacekeeping force that had been guarding the border with Israel for over a decade. On May 22nd, he banned Israeli shipping from the Straits of Tiran, the sea passage connecting the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba. A week later, he sealed a defense pact with King Hussein of Jordan. As the situation in the Middle East deteriorated, American President Lyndon B. Johnson cautioned both sides against firing the first shot and attempted to garner support for an international maritime operation to reopen the Straits of Tiran. The plan never materialized, however, and by early June 1967, Israeli leaders had voted to counter the Arab military buildup by launching a preemptive strike. On June 5, 1967, the Israeli Defense Force initiated Operation Focus, a coordination aerial attack on Egypt. The morning, some 200 aircraft took off from Israel and swooped west over the Mediterranean before converging on Egypt from the north. After catching the Egyptians by surprise, they assaulted 18 different airfields and eliminated roughly 90% of the Egyptian Air Force as it sat on the ground. Israel then expanded its attack range and decimated the air forces of Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. By the end of the day on June 5th, Israeli pilots had won full control of the skies over the Middle East. Israel all but secured victory by establishing air superiority, but fierce fighting continued for several more days. The ground war in Egypt began on June 5th. In concert with the airstrikes, Israeli tanks and infantry stormed across the border and into the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip. Egyptian forces put up a spirited resistance, but fell into disarray after Field Marshal Abdel Hakim Amr ordered a general retreat. Over the next several days, Israeli forces pursued the routed Egyptians across the Sinai, inflicting several casualties. A second front in the Six Day War opened in June 5th when Jordan began shelling Israel positions in Jerusalem. Israel responded with a devastating counterattack on East Jerusalem and the West Bank. On June 7th, Israeli troops captured the old city of Jerusalem and celebrated by praying at the Western Wall. The last phase of the fighting took place along Israel's northeastern border with Syria. On June 9th, following an intense aerial bombardment, Israeli attacks, tanks, and infantry advanced on a heavily fortified region of Syria called the Golden Heights. They successfully captured the Golan the next day. On June 10th, 1967, a United Nations brokered ceasefire took effect and the Six Day War came to an abrupt end. It was later estimated that some 20,000 Arabs and 800 Israelis had died in just 132 hours of fighting. The leaders of the Arab states were left shocked by the severity of their defeat. Egyptian President Nasser even resigned in disgrace, only to promptly return to office after Egyptian citizens showed their support with massive street demonstrations. In Israel, the nation mood was jubilant. In less than a week, the young nation had captured the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.